Hello everyone. This is not a gentle review. I went into the new movie 731 expecting a serious, respectful film about one of the darkest chapters in modern history. What I saw instead was a noisy, sloppy, and sometimes cynical attempt to use patriotism as a marketing safe pass. And it's worth calling that out plainly. First, a short content warning. 731 contains graphic violence and disturbing imagery. If you're sensitive to that, be cautious. That said, if a film wants to tackle historical atrocity, it has a responsibility to do it carefully and honestly. This one fails on that responsibility in multiple ways. On paper, 731 wants to be a hard, unflinching drama about wartime crimes and biological experimentation. It bills itself as a history-based, emotionally heavy piece, a film that reveals the truth and forces us to remember. But the finished product too often chooses spectacle over substance. I won't spoil every twist, but here's the gist. The film places a group of characters inside wartime facilities and attempts to depict the horror of human experiments and the cruelty of occupying forces. The movie jumps between scenes of supposed realism and sequences that feel constructed for shock rather than for meaning. Visually, the film is striking in the worst way. Instead of a sober, muted palette that reflects the weight of history, the film is drenched in garish, candy-colored grading. Imagine a theme park's neon stuck onto a war drama. Cold historical materials should feel textured and worn. Here, props and sets look brand new and strangely modern. The production often looks less like a reconstruction of the past and more like a fantasy set painted with every color option available. The camera and post-production don't help. Over-sharpened images, aggressive color overlays, and heavy-handed lighting create a false sheen that turns suffering into spectacle. Gratuitous lighting and sloppy color grading amplify the artificiality, and the intended horror becomes a kind of theme park grotesque. The director seems to believe that piling on bloody set pieces and cheap CGI equals gravity. We get scenes of mutilation and shock moments that, rather than building empathy, feel like props. Blood for horror's sake is not the same as bearing witness to historical atrocity. When the film substitutes real contextual depth with shock value gore, it risks trivializing the actual suffering the narrative claims to represent. Originally marketed as a film that respects historical fact, it instead inserts fictional backstories, invented facilities, and implausible scenarios that have the feel of plot conveniences rather than careful reconstruction. The effect is not nuance or reinterpretation, it's sloppy rewriting. If you're calling your film historical, you must justify departures from fact. This film doesn't. It replaces documentary rigor with melodrama and calls it truth. Originally marketed as a film that respects historical fact, it instead inserts fictional backstories, invented facilities, and implausible scenarios that have the feel of plot conveniences rather than careful reconstruction. The effect is not nuance or reinterpretation, it's sloppy rewriting. If you're calling your film historical, you must justify departures from fact. This film doesn't. It replaces documentary rigor with melodrama and calls it truth.